Walk up. What's up, everybody? I'm back wrapping up Street Fighter film, like the ones I wanted to cover with the originally like different the mini series or webisodes, I should say, that was eventually mashed together to make a single over 2 hour long film. Which is amazingly produced. Produced by what's his name, Yoshinori Ono, who make a cameo in this as a fighting producer in this film, and honestly, if you haven't already, please do yourself a favor. Go up on YouTube and watch this film, because until that new Street Fighter movie comes out next year, this is honestly, and I don't think it's being talked about much, is honestly the most respected collaboration and understanding the source material of Street Fighter. It isn't bogged down with too many characters. They stick to the source material. There's love and respect, and they're working well with the creators. It's more so aligned with what's going on with Street Fighter 4, but this is pretty much like a prequel in a way that leads up to like the overall story narrative of Street Fighter, with, well, at least in parts of how Ryu and Ken started out on their journey. We're primarily focusing on their upbringing and training. And honestly, we are because there's it's obviously an ensemble cast, but there's like a fair, because I was about to say, it's like a fair amount of screen time dedicated to a lot of these characters that we're following. But being that originally it was aired as webisodes, and somebody just eventually put it all together in order, then of course, it seems like, oh, this is like a respectable time for every character. But it's really good, and I especially love what they've done with Akuma. It is just like amazing. Like I said, it doesn't get talked about enough, and I encourage everybody to do yourselves a favor and watch Street Fighter Assassin's Fist. It's really good. It's directed by Joey Ansa, starring Akira Koyama as Goken, Shogun as a young Goken, Christian Howard as Ken Masters, Mike Moe as Ryu. You might remember him, who was in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. No, not Mexico. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a young Bruce Lee. Togo Igawa as Gotetsu, Gaku Space as Goki, Joey Ansa, who plays an older Goki aka Akuma, Hyunuri as Sayaka, the love interest of Goki, who's an original character for this particular film. Mark Keeling as Mr. Masters, father to Ken, and Hal Yamanouchi as Sanzo, the I guess kind of like the innkeeper of the home that they're staying in. So, like I said before, we're pretty much just watching the training of, or at least leading up to the completion of Ken and Ryu's training. And of course, Ken is getting a little anxious because he's feeling like he learned all he needs to learn. Well, not so far, but he's ready to go because he kind of feeling trapped. He wants to see the world. He got that, hot-blooded spirit in him. And of course, Ryu, who's the reverse. He isn't too psyched to go out into the world. He knows it's probably the day is going to probably come when he's going to learn all he needs to learn. He's just he was an orphan child, and Gouken was the only father he ever knew. So this is all he knows. But it's just something like each, of the boys got to learn something. Then we see how Ken lost his mom at a young age, and his father, who's trying to run the company because, Street Fighter canon, Ken Masters is like a hotel magnate, kind of. He's very rich. But his father, in this point in time, is running the show, and of course, after the loss of the mom, young Ken got into a lot of fights, being very, very rambunctious, and he's, the father's at his wit's end. So he goes to his childhood friend Gouken to try to instill some level of discipline in him, which works out well. But Ken took a long time to, when he got older, come to realize, okay, I understand why my father left me here, but I still I wanted to go my own way instead of coming back to run the company, because it's not something like I'm psyched to do kind of thing. It is kind of like a funny, I won't say funny, but kind of like a cool moment, I guess. It's very average, in my personal opinion. Where, of course, the father, knows how to box. Now, not saying boxing isn't a great martial art in its own right. However, compared to, the type of martial arts Gouken was training, it's kind of like comparing Taekwondo to boxing. Both are great in their own right, but Taekwondo is like a far superior martial art compared to just boxing. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's kind of like, there's certain martial arts that's probably greater than other martial arts. Like, I'm pretty sure that jiu-jitsu can pretty much outmaneuver capoeira by leaps and bounds, personally. Not saying capoeira is lame by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that there's, mentally speaking, you would think. I don't want to assume, but I just, on paper, just depending on the fighter, of course, but just on paper, certain things like Taekwondo or Jiu-Jitsu would outmaneuver something like boxing and capoeira, which good on their own right, but you take the skillful, like the most expert capoeira fighter up against the most expert jiu-jitsu, more times out of not, jiu-jitsu will probably beat him. Anyway, it's just fun to see, Ken and Ryu, after all those martial arts training over a decade, they started learning how to box, which is like a handy tool to learn, because there's fundamentals and stuff like that involved that you would need to know to handle yourself. But you would think like their hand speed and all this other stuff would already been kind of like embedded in the tools that they was already learning. But whatever. uh, eventually Ken, well, during their training period, the next step in their training, they traveled to Goken's old master's dojo, which has been kind of like sealed off for a while. It's not like it is completely abandoned. There was some level of upkeep, but he doesn't like visit all too often, and he goes there for their final time of training, at least the last couple of steps of their training. And there's a funny moment where this old man it constantly teases Ken, calling him a woman and everything like that, and just constantly praising Ryu, and it just gets under Ken's skin. It's so funny. I really love that bit. That old man was hilarious. But anywho, Ken ends up coming acrossing Akuma's old bedroom that's been sealed off, boarded up, but not all that boarded up. It was like two small planks of wood covering the doors, and it's like whatever. Oh, they do come across this nice little name drop of Dan Hibiki. Well, they didn't say the full name, but there's only one character named Dan in the entire Street Fighter series. And it's clearly Dan Hibiki, who has been taught the Asasuken by Goken, but he's just never able to do it on the same skill level as Ryu or Ken. But it's a nice little name drop. There are some Dan Hibiki fans out there in the world, and I don't hate Dan. He's fun. He's one of those kind of joke characters, but he's not annoying. He's just he when he's there, he's used at a good amount, and then he's gone. I just kind of wish there's like some level of like acknowledgments, because clearly in the game, Ken and Ryu are familiar with Dan, and Dan has some good backstory in his own right, because he went to learn martial arts from Goken after his father died by the hands of Sagat, I think. I'm pretty sure it's Sagat. It was during the early days of Sagat's rise to power kind of thing. And he's kind of obsessed with getting revenge on Sagat, but after Goken realized what he's trying to use it for, which is not something he wants to teach somebody who's only learning just to get revenge, so his training wasn't necessarily complete. That's part of why a lot of his moves seem so rudimentary compared to, and I would say rudimentary, I don't know if that's the proper word, but it just wasn't on the same level as Ken or Ryu. Anyway, Ken comes across this old book, the sketchbook that used to belong to a young Akuma, and is when we get like flashbacks of a young Goken and Akuma training under Gotetsu, who I'm glad they kind of weaved in some real world kind of stuff. Like, he clearly was a war veteran of WW2, and after the war he ends up going back to his old dojo, and he had like a niece, and there was like a war buddy of his who was the father of Goken and Akuma, who are brothers, and he lost his life during the war, and as a pledge he decided to look after his two young boys, so that's where he started training them in the Asasuken. But of course, Akuma discovered the Dark Hado, which is a forbidden technique. Gotetsu is one of the very few, or probably maybe the only one, who can balance both the light side and the dark side of this the Asasuken, but it's a delicate balancing act. You can very easily lose yourself by. It's kind of like tapping into. It's like a gray Jedi kind of situation. The dark side clearly is very enticing, and to Goken, who is striving to be the best fighter, and this technique, is like a gateway to that. But there's clearly drawbacks here that Gotetsu warns him about. Well, of course, he wasn't going to listen because there's some level of jealousy with Goken, on top of wanting to be stronger. Because he lives to fight. He wants to increase his skill level. But it's pretty much like tapping into demonic forces in a way. He's hurting on the inside, is literally killing him on the inside out. Normally people who try to tap into this Dark Hado, they end up not surviving. When it was discovered he was tapping into that, and he tried to tell this secret to Goken, he was reprimanded and told to leave. So he went out to this cave entrance. Like I said, the cinematography and the places where they shot this looks amazing. He constantly was training, building up his body, just becoming like a beast, and then constantly meditating and training, and discovering that he's gonna have to lose his humanity to completely give himself over fully. He has to fully commit to this as like a complete lifestyle, pretty much, that only the worthy shall walk this path. The truly dedicated. So he gives up everything from his past that he ever knew, everything, his connections to humanity. He has to completely obliterate that fully. No hold on to anything. Now there is a rumor in the Street Fighter canon that Akuma might be Ryu's father. I like to think that's fairly possible if you really write it in the correct way, because I think that is like a long-running theory. It's kind of like with Ash Ketchum being the son of Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket. It's never been confirmed, but it's kind of like a theory that's kind of bearing some weight to it. And of course, like Ryu has during his training, he's been slightly unknowingly tapping into this Dark Hado, and that kind of adds on to the theory. But because he inadvertently did this, it kind of sounded a beacon to Akuma. This also alerts Goken. He eventually tells some of his past to the boys, especially when Akuma just kind of shows up in the dojo, surprising Akuma. And honestly, I love the Japanese dialogue, especially coming from the actor who played Akuma. I'm not sure if it was dubbed or it was actually the actor himself, but he actually sounds just like Akuma, Japanese voice actor, because there's very little of Japanese subs that I actually like hearing as much as the English comparison. And Akuma's being like Akuma and Orochimaru from Naruto is probably like the two top, at least that I can think of, the top two ones that the Japanese voice actors that I really like. Let me look at this, because it's like, is he actually the voice for Akuma? No, it doesn't look like it. But man, does he sound like it? So, you know, they have to abandon this entire place because and go back to the previous home because Goken kind of hopes that, okay, if because Akuma wants to challenge Goken, you know, it's been like a very long time since they last saw each other, because the last time Goken saw Akuma was when they was young, and Akuma came back after embracing this power and not dying. He challenges their master and beats him with the assassin's fist. And man, he like when the look of it's like they make sure they match perfectly of these special moves. Unlike previous Street Fighter films where they half-ass it, they fully embrace it. They don't need to ground anything. It's just like, you know, they do the straight up Shoryuken. They lift off the ground. They even got like Ken flaming his fist as he like does the Shoryuken. They actually got the Hadoukens. Even they do the hand motion stuff. You buy it, and even with like, okay, the Tatsumatsu Fukaku or the Hurricane Kick, it's kind of it kind of looks like a regular roundhouse kick, but you know, but even still, it's like you want to buy it because there's like a sound attached to it that sounds like the helicopter kind of thing like you hear in the game. So it kind of adds to the believability. So like I just love they embrace the moves. It's like, you know, the moves that we are super familiar with that every young kid all have done growing up. It's about as much as we all had done a KO, not a KO, but Kamehameha. It's like, you know, Hadouken and Kamehameha. It's probably like and Shoryuken. It's probably like the, you know, biggest things that especially young boys, always tried to do in their youth. Don't lie, you all have done it. But during their final steps of training, Ryu you know, taps into the Hado again. This, you know, sends out another beacon to Akuma, which Goken knows, okay, he's on his way, and I can't even hide it, and I can't run from my demons any further. So I can't allow Akuma to know that this power was emanating from Ryu, otherwise he will keep hounding him because he will feel the need to challenge another person who taps into this power, warrior against warrior. So he has like he you know, officially graduates his students, saying like, I taught you all that, and he, now Reed pointed out, we still got one more year left, but it's kind of like he felt comfortable to, you know, take him on the next path at this point, because they learned the Shoryuken and the Hadouken and all this other stuff. They, you know, I guess he kind of rushed the last bits because of the whole Akuma situation. So this is the moment where, like, okay, I'm gonna send them out into the world, because that's where like Special Reed is going to do the traveling and meeting different fighters that we were familiar with, and, you know, start the whole, because they call it like the Warriors pilgrimage or something like that. The same thing that Goken did, after he lost his master. But he didn't go right away. It wasn't until after the love interest, well, she had a thing for Akuma, but because of her uncle forbidding her to try to fawn for him, because he's supposed to be dead to the rest of them because of what he's chosen, because of his chosen path, and just go towards Goken because he's like a suitable candidate. But she was an empty shell after the loss of her uncle, and so by extension Goken, because he wasn't going on his pilgrimage like he was supposed to. So it was like a wound left in that household. She kind of leaves a note and leaves from parts unknown, completely don't know what's going on, what happened with her. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I mean, she wasn't like a waste of space or anything like that. But we never got any kind of understanding of what, came of her. So, Goken went out to start his pilgrimage, in which eventually he met up with that crazy old man who found Ryu as a young boy, a cute little tyke too, and Goken took the kid under his wing, and that's when they started training and beginning the story. So when leaving like a journal, a final journal entry, accepting the fact that he's probably going to die, he sends Senzo to go mail this off for Ken and Ryu to get later, because he kind of owed Yeller this situation, trying to make sure that they are not around and don't involve themselves at all. And Akuma eventually shows up, and these two brothers decides to settle things, and Goken really wanted that closure because he still felt hurt by what his brother did to the family and their master. And Akuma doesn't really care about any of that stuff. He wants to fight the greatest warriors. He wants to, test his mettle, increase his power, to be like the ultimate warrior. That's all he cares about. Everything else is like meaningless in his mindset. So this is where the movie ends. Now, I of course truncated. This is like a well over 2-hour movie. I truncated this, mind you, to the best of my abilities, but there was like a good equal amount of screen time with these characters. Now, there was a moment where Ken convinced Ryu to go out on a night of the town with him in Japan, in the city, and they see like this, this club that has like a little street fighting thing inside, and there's some military guys fighting, in this kind of ring, and of course Ken kind of pushes Ryu into it to test his fighting skills. I'm thinking to myself, this would have been a perfect time to do some kind of cameo with Guile, because he's an American military, Air Force military soldier, and it would have been cool to have like an introduction with his, at least a cameo with his character fighting with Ken or Ryu. So he gets, like a characters outside of the inner circle of Ken and Ryu's little pocket. But we didn't. Matter of fact, we didn't get to see like a full-fledged like street fight tournament, at least not a mini one at the least. Maybe it wasn't in the budget, but it's like, come on, why you introduce this part if you're not going to at least give us one round of a fight at the very least. He kind of blue balled us. Anyway, yeah, very little complaints I have about this. They did a dang with this. Like I said, in terms of so far, at least for right now, and for the longest time, in my opinion, this has probably been the true blue, live action Street Fighter film. And it's not talked about enough because I know we've been getting like lackluster video game adaptations around this time when this came out and a little bit after. But fairly, recently, or at least recent years, since Sonic and Detective Pikachu came out, we've been getting some decent amount of quality video game adaptations. This should be on the list of really good video game adaptations. We like, the 90s Street Fighter film for its campiness, but it wasn't like a dedicated adaptation. The Legend of Chun-Li was not fun or campy, and dang sure was not a dedicated adaptation. Of course, we had the animated films, but I think Street Fighter 2 animated films probably like a good adaptation. But in terms of live action, this one was like, it was the only one that actually was true blue, closest to a perfect adaptation. And they didn't make the moves look stupid, but they still embrace it. It's like, no, we're going to have a flaming Shoryuken fist, and by George, we're going to show it. And it's going to look cool. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Assassin's Fist. Do you remember watching it? It was like coming out like piece by piece, and it felt like, oh my god, like it felt like forever before we got it, uploaded to YouTube so we can see what the next episode was. Now you get to see all in context in one go. Anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit. This is technically the start of the Halloween season, so I got a movie I want to get to in a minute, but I wanted to wrap up the Street Fighter film reviews with Assassin's Fist. So I will see you guys in a minute. Leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think. Who's your favorite Street Fighter character of all time? Who's your least favorite? Because I think Rufus and Birdie is probably my least favorite Street Fighter characters of all time. Some might say El Fuerte, but I will fight for El Fuerte. He probably like at least average. Him and Adon's probably like average. Well, Adon's probably like above average in terms of Street Fighter characters that I like. But Birdie and Rufus sucks. Matter of fact, it would be kind of funny if they introduced Rufus, because this was kind of based off the Street Fighter 4 game, which is probably like, I still think is like my favorite Street Fighter game personally. Especially, they kind of evolved it to Ultra Super Street Fighter 4. Still, Street Fighter 4 just in general is an incredible Street Fighter game of all time. I had so much fun playing it. But it would have been fun in that little fight with the American soldiers. We get to see Rufus and he meets Ken for the first time because he has some kind of weird rivalry, like one-sided rivalry against Ken, who doesn't even know this guy exists. Don't even explain why he has such like a grudge against the guy. But it would have been fun to see like the introduction of Ken kind of inadvertently, not in like a full-on fight, but inadvertently kind of embarrassed him or trips him up or kind of makes him look like a clown, kind of, see the origin of Rufus's grudge against Ken. That would have been funny. I would have done that personally. But anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit. Take care and have a good night.